Okay, buckle up, because this Jenkins saga reads like a slow-motion collapse you can't look away from. It is a family story that began as relatively messy and has piece by piece become something darker and harder to stomach. If you followed Stephanie and Drew when they first started posting, you remember the pull. A tired, messy mom who called herself resilient, who filmed spilled cereal and sticky fingers and bedtime meltdowns and somehow made the small, exhausted triumphs feel human and worth rooting for. That was the hook. People connected with that rawness because it felt authentic. Lately, though, something changed. The camera kept rolling, but the thing behind the camera seemed to shift from documenting life to manufacturing feeling. Posts that once felt like intimate confessions now flickered with the energy of crafted performance. The kids, who used to be incidental parts of that authenticity, are increasingly turning into props in a narrative designed to pull at viewers' hearts. And the more the family leans on spectacle, the more viewers insist something is wrong. The latest wave of videos and clips, the Halloween post, the storage unit footage, the repeated reframing of Drew as either the villain who never helped or the saintly partner who saves the day has caused a lot of people to call the Jenkins resilience into question. For many watchers, whatever credibility they once had is crumbling. It starts with the optics. Halloween, a day meant for simple moments and sugar-fueled joy, got repurposed into an emotionally confusing display. The kids wearing costume, running under streetlights, and for a moment it looked normal and even sweet. A rare frame of outdoor air and movement away from the cramped motel rooms most viewers had come to see in other footage. But then your eye catches the details that don't fit. The oldest daughter, Addie, is shouldering a baby carrier instead of tottering around with a candy bucket and a sticky grin. That image, more than any caption, pushes a bell of unease. Viewers who have followed the account long enough have seen patterns. Eldest kids acting as second parents, shoulder-length childhoods replaced by caretaking roles, and a parent who sometimes slips into scolding when those children fail at grown-up tasks. There is a line between teaching responsibility and stealing a childhood, and many watching felt Addie had been nudged, then shoved across that line. It's not just the baby carrier itself that unsettles people. It's what that carrier implies about roles in that family and the pressure being placed on a child who should, by all rights, be trading candy and comparing costumes. That quiet, glaring contradiction. The child in carer's roles at a holiday designed for play. Amplified worries that Stephanie's content priorities might skew dangerously away from the kids' needs. Safety concerns amplified the discomfort. That family of 7 squeezed into a small sedan where a seatbelt is skipped. Kids sitting on laps paints a picture that many viewers called reckless. Public transit might be messy, Stephanie has said, but cramming multiple kids into a car with minimal regard for safety is not a glamorous alternative. Audiences didn't see an exhausted parent making a necessary compromise. They read a pattern. Couple the car scene with footage of children slightly unsupervised, a toddler wandering near boxes during a storage unit visit, and the reaction intensifies from judgment to alarm. Viewers began to ask whether the family's social media storytelling was obscuring practical, immediate lapses in care. The camera frames emotion but doesn't always act on it. And when a toddler wanders into a video while adults narrate feelings about a storage unit full of ruined belongings, people watching start to wonder what takes priority, the narrative or the kid's safety. And then there is the pattern of narrative pivoting. Stephanie's storytelling has increasingly shifted toward a performance that solicits sympathy, fans, and sometimes direct donations. A storage unit video, ostensibly a dismal surprise of rat damage and missing pans, became, to many viewers, another circuit in a predictable loop. Crisis, response, content, donation appeal. People in comments called the arc recognizable. Dramatic reveal, wistful voiceover about lost memories, appeal to community generosity. That pattern is what puts donors in a complicated position. Fans want to help, but they also begin to feel used if the tangible fruits of generosity later appear neglected or shoved away in a pest-infested unit. Critics point to the fact that the Jenkins reportedly had time to prepare for eviction notices, yet waited until the last moment to pack and move, as evidence of avoidable negligence. Whether that neglect is malice, incompetence, or a combination, it still translates to harm for the children caught in the middle. When donations and gifts vanish into a storage unit only to be unearthed and chewed by pests later, the viewers who gave in good faith feel betrayed. For some, the emotional calculus flips, sympathy curdles into suspicion, and many no longer see resilience as a survival story, but as PR. On top of the recycling of content and the questionable timing of post, the relationship choreography between Stephanie and Drew adds another layer of cognitive dissonance. People who have followed saw Stephanie publicly sobbing about Drew's absence or failures in previous lives. She told stories of disappointment, scolded him for not helping, and all of that built a narrative of a single mom stretched to the limit. Then, in a later post, he's suddenly held up as a heroic partner for doing the bare minimum, doing dishes, holding babies, and putting away some stuff. The apparent whiplash is confusing to watchers. One moment, Drew is the villain, the next, he is sainted. That flip-flop fuels an online narrative of performance because it reads less like a truthful relationship with ebb and flow and more like a curated set of frames designed to alternate the emotional valve between pity and reassurance, which are both engagement magnets. When a content creator publicizes a relationship as both he never helps and my rock within weeks, audiences begin to feel manipulated because the apparent contradiction suggests strategic message management rather than messy human complexity. And it's not just the love letter to Drew that aggravates people. It's what these narratives mask. Stephanie will call-coat an image. She'll frame a drink in her hand as self-care or a new plant as growth, while the children are living month after month in transient motel rooms. When followers point out that plants cost money, while kids' basic necessities seem perpetually precarious, the response is often to double down on emotionally charged captions about gratitude, family, and healing. For watchers who remember the early days where sincere exhaustion beat faux Instagram serenity, the shift feels like a switch from authenticity to PR. Money matters aren't inherently shameful. People tweet, stream, and ask for help online all the time. But when donations and fan support appear to vanish into an opaque consumption pattern, fans get wary. One of the more striking moments in the recent posts was the storage unit clip, where Stephanie repeatedly framed her own emotional response as empathy for Drew, rather than grief for the family's lost possessions or memories. The narrative pivots to Drew's experience as mover of things, not to the kids who might have lost toys or keepsakes, or to the family's day-to-day absence of stability. That choice of focus has made viewers question priorities. Why feel most for the adult who moved boxes, and not the kids who may be missing continuity and safety? It's the kind of rhetorical tilt that validators and critics alike notice. Empathy can be selective, and selective empathy in public-facing content reads as performance if it's paired with repeated calls for sympathy that aren't matched by visible changes in caretaker behavior. The storage unit footage itself produced a cascade of questions beyond narrative framing. Viewers noted rats, ruined boxes, missing kitchenware, and the casual way those facts were dropped into a video that primarily functioned as glossy content. The claim that the unit had previously been auctioned off for a few dollars, which Drew's sister reportedly said was true months ago, adds a troubling swirl of inconsistencies about whether the footage was new or recycled. Did Stephanie hold on to archival clips and release them strategically when engagement dipped? Was the unit actually auctioned previously and the new footage staged for sympathy? Those possibility spaces generate distrust. Even if the truth is prosaic, that footage is old, that people are misremembering details, that family drama is complicated, the damage is done. In the era of content recycling and audience skepticism, a misaligned timeline becomes a symbol. You are not sharing reality. You might be curating a narrative with an eye on monetization. That monetization angle is unavoidable. Social media fame has economic incentives baked in. Viral sympathy translates into followers, which translates into views and sponsorships, and sometimes direct financial support through wish lists and donations. That economic reality doesn't automatically make someone exploitative. Many creators with real needs find help via followers, but the pattern of crisis content hinges on credibility. Once the audience feels manipulated, the taps close. The most charitable viewers even admit the possibility that this is a cry for help, packaged in the only way the creator knows how, through the camera. But the less charitable see a cycle. Create a problem, get donations, let the problem fester, repeat. That cycle is what makes people so exasperated, not just the hardship itself, but what appears to be a habitual turning of private suffering into public currency, while the underlying issues remain unresolved. Then there's the harm to the children themselves. Parents on social media face a difficult ethical balance. Documenting family life can create income that supports kids, but it can also cannibalize privacy. The Jenkins kids have been broadcast in varying levels of vulnerability, wandering near boxes, being carried by an older sibling, and being included in posts about eviction and rats. Where does compassion end and exploitation begin? That's the line many viewers want to know, and often the only real test is what the family does off-camera. Are the kids being protected? Are there concrete attempts to stabilize their environment that viewers can see beyond the emotional captions and edited clips? For a significant portion of the audience, the answer appears to be no. Hopeful folks point to moments when Drew remembers a birthday, or when there is a genuine little burst of tenderness, and say, well, there are real flashes of care there. Cynics reply that flashes are not a substitute for consistent care. The interpersonal dynamics add a final layer of complexity. Some commenters have accused Drew of infidelity in prior online discussions, accusations that complicate the family story and fuel even more comments for or against the couple. Accusations of cheating are explosive in a public sphere and must be handled carefully. They're often fueled by hearsay and commentary rather than hard evidence. Still, in the court of public opinion, rumor becomes narrative. When viewers see a woman perform devotion to a partner who allegedly has been absent or unfaithful, the optics are damning. People ask why she defends him so ardently, why she recasts him as a knight when he's been criticized as a no-show. But again, because social media reduces complex human decisions into a few short clips and heart emojis, there is a scarcity of context. We see a public performance. We cannot reliably peer into the private reasoning that motivates continued loyalty. Humans are messy. Attachment and denial and hope and fear can coexist, and none of those words excuse neglect, but they do explain why the on-camera story might not track with what an outside viewer wants it to be. Which leaves the audience with a difficult question. What responsibility do watchers bear? When viewers see possible neglect, inconsistent narratives about storage units and evictions, and kids used as emotional leverage, do they call authorities? Do they offer to help? Or do they pile on in comments, making a spectacle out of suffering? The online community is split. Some have attempted to do the right thing by offering resources and contacts, urging the family to seek local help, shelters, or social services. Others have lashed out, creating an ever louder pile-on that often accomplishes little beyond inflaming a wounded person. The most constructive path is rare and difficult. Provide help in a way that respects privacy. Escalate when there is clear danger, and avoid performative outrage that benefits no one. Unfortunately, the spectacle economy rarely rewards nuance. So, where do we land on accountability? If the Jenkins story is a cautionary tale, it's about the risks of converting personal crisis into a content strategy without accountability or visible attempts at change. People watching ask simple, practical things. Where is the consistent care for the children? Why are donations and gifts ending up in a rodent-infested storage unit? Why are the kids being placed in caretaker roles? Why is risk normalized in car rides? If the answers are logistical complexity and human error, that's one level of problem. If the answers are pattern and choice, that's a different moral calculus. For many viewers, the sheer repetitiveness of the same cycles, content, sympathy, stagnation, indicates more than randomness. It indicates a pattern that exploits attention without resolving the underlying issues. Yet the other side of the ledger is human fragility. Real families face eviction, shame, and the slippery slope of decisions that look poor in hindsight. Social media can be a lifeline. People who are out of options sometimes use their platform to ask for help. The line between exploitation and survival is thin. Some defenders of Stephanie insist that she's doing what she can with the tools she has, and that publicly sharing hardship can attract community resources that otherwise would be unavailable. That view asks us to be less quick to judge and more vital in offering practical solutions. But nuance is much harder to monetize than outrage, and few people in the comment-fed feedback loop feel compelled to meet nuance with patience. At the core of everyone's discomfort is a single, painful truth. The children deserve better. Viewers keep returning to that premise because it's the only moral North Star in a swirl of shifting narratives. Whether the parents are misguided, overwhelmed, manipulative, or honest in their love, the kids are the ones who carry the consequences of choices and patterns. If anything positive could come from this messy stream of content and commentary, it would be a pivot toward action that prioritizes children's safety over narrative currency. Families in crisis need concrete help, access to social services, stable housing, food security, and child-focused care. They also need boundaries if their online activity is putting vulnerable folks, namely their own children, at risk of harm. The internet can be a tool for good, but right now it's mostly doing what it always does best: amplifying friction without always providing solutions. Finally, there is the broader cultural mirror this saga holds up. We live in an era where personal tragedy can be monetized, where authenticity is a commodity, and where the most intimate moments are public property if you allow them to be. That dynamic creates perverse incentives. It rewards the dramatic cycle of chaos and comeback because it clicks. Creators who once made small, earnest videos about household life can learn to lean into spectacle because spectacle works. The moral hazard is that as spectacle accumulates, the line between calling out and contributing blurs. As observers, we must decide whether to be vultures who feed on collapsing lives or advocates who push for meaningful help. That is less a question about a single family and more a question about what kind of online community we want to be. Watching the Jenkins content unspool, you feel many things: sadness, anger, frustration, compassion, and fatigue. Those emotions are natural when the raw seams of family life are stitched under an unforgiving public microscope. The pattern of crisis, the eye-catching captions, the oscillating portrait of Drew, the way kids are given adult responsibilities, all of it produces a social media product that tastes like betrayal to some and like survival to others. The best-case scenario is that these public moments spark private turning points. Intervention from social services, genuine attempts at stabilization, or a shift away from monetized hardship toward discreet repair. The worst-case scenario is more of the same: shock content fueling compassion fatigue, and a generation of kids who will tell stories about a childhood that got filmed more than it got protected. At the end of the day, the most important voices in this unfolding are not the critics and not the commentators. They are the children. Everything else should orbit the question: what keeps them safe and well? If the content continues without visible, meaningful change, the online chorus will only grow louder and go in waves between pity and rage. If the parents choose to pivot, to stop leaning on curated suffering as a business model and instead seek help that results in tangible, long-term improvement for their children, then maybe the page can be turned. Until that change becomes visible, viewers will keep watching, judging, and commenting. And the brand called Resilient Jenkins will likely be read as a cautionary label, rather than the badge of honest survival it once suggested. The real resilience the children need is not performative. It's structural. Safe housing, uninterrupted care, and adults who do the hard work off camera rather than performing it to the camera. Until we see that kind of resilience, the online world will continue to ask a blunt question. Are we watching a family in crisis or a family whose crisis has been turned into content? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to support the channel. Thanks.